Bryan Kohberger made his appearance at his prelim, and it was a very quiet appearance, if you will. And we're going to talk about some of the highlights in that, as well as some of the body cam footage that was released semi-recently in today's video. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the sofa, which is still behind me, with Mr. Roscoe holding it down, and my name is Paul. Now, as you heard in my little intro, we're going to be talking about Bryan Kohberger. This is the gentleman from the Idaho 4 case, and he has been making headlines again. Now, what's been going on with him is this, a whole bunch of stuff. So he recently went to his preliminary hearing, went over the charges, did all this type stuff. As many of you probably know by now, he stood silent, which is essentially, having the judge say, pleading not guilty type thing. Okay, now other stuff has been going on with this case. I want to say behind the scenes, but behind the scenes, as you know, if you've been following me, true crime, the Daybell trial, the Letitia trial, Classic and Sincere, Trezell and Jacqueline West trial, all this has been going on, right? And as we know, the Idaho 4 situation, it's not gone to trial yet. This is in the very beginning stages. So one thing that I wanted to do in this video is talk about a few particular things. And the way we'll do it is we're going to look at some video clips. Number one, from that prelim. Number two, from another police stop, traffic stop that took place before the murders happened. And what I want to do with that is look at, I'm going to say body language, but if you don't follow me, then know this now. I ain't a lawyer. I ain't some expert. I'm just a guy with a sofa back here, okay? And these are all just my opinions. But what I want to do is look at that, because comparing his body language in that and other things that we've seen him, I'm starting to get a clearer picture of being like, okay, this is just how this guy is, right? And not reading overly deep into it. Whereas in the beginning, I was like, well, this is really odd the way he does this or says this or smiles or whatever, right? So I want to talk about that, and then some of these charges and whatnot. And that's it. So that's how we'll do it. We'll put the video clips up, we'll talk about it, and then at the end of the video, we'll talk about some overall thoughts on it. So let's go ahead and get into that first one. The infamous smile. Okay. Now, before, in one of these other, hearings that he did with his attorney, when he came out as one of the first ones, and he did this smile, right? And it broke the internet, broke my internet, right? Because I was like, oh my God, that's so bizarre, that's so wild. And this is kind of why I wanted to start the video off with this, because watching his behavior in the body cam footage later, I was like, okay, hold on, I think this is just how this guy is, right? So given the context of what we're looking at, where it's like, okay, he's, allegedly, has done all these, terrible murders and all this type of stuff, and he comes out and gives this very quick, kind of ice cold smile, and then goes right back to this like flat, face or whatever. And so I wanted to start off with that, because again, do I think it's a little bit disarming? Yes. Do I think that it means that, oh my gosh, anyone who does this is some psychopath killer? No, right? And we're going to talk about how some of these behaviors link back with this type, just flat affect that he seemed to go back and rest at. But also, it very much reminds me of Ted Bundy. His look, his demeanor, and this kind of look that he does, and then this quick, like very charming smile, and then going back to business. So let's watch the next clip.
What you do need to remember, though, is that anything you do say, other than to your lawyers, could be used against you in a later court proceeding. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now again, listen to how he says this, like, yes, I do. I just think that's how he talks, right? I mean, I think that's how he is. But again, there's like, it's very flat, it's very matter of fact. And I think because of that, it makes him come off, and again, given the context, and it just makes him come off like creepy, right? But that doesn't mean anything other than that. So let's watch the next clip.
Starting with count 1, burglary. That is a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-1401 and 1403. This alleges that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. Count 2, murder in the first degree. That was a felony under Idaho Code Section 18-4001. 4002, 4003, and 4004. This alleges that you, on or about November 13, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died.
Now, the reason I put this up, and it goes on and on with the other charges and whatnot, but I just wanted to do a quick clip of it to watch the little nuances that he does. Number one, he does that quick little smile again, when he goes back. And then the kind of, the movements when the names come up, the actions, the alleged actions against them. Again, does it mean anything? Does it mean he's guilty? No. I just find it interesting because to me, it seems like he's very nervous. Would I be too? Yeah. Especially if I was, being held up against these charges. I mean, let's be honest. Whether you're guilty or not a cute look to be sitting in there hearing this coming off from the judge's mouth, right? But again, I just thought that these kind of, what I would almost say are involuntary little bodily actions that he's doing, right? But again, I'm no body language expert. I don't know. That's just my opinion. So again, let's move it forward. Watch the next clip.
Kill and murder Zayna Kernodle. Excuse me. This is hard. I'm sorry. Zayna Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing.
Okay, now when the judge messed up on the names here, this, did not go over well with some of the victims' families and whatnot. People were upset about it. Now I get that there is, some of the names are hard to pronounce. One would think he would know how to go over them at this point or go on that before that. So again, I just wanted to mention this because I was reading comment sections and watching some of the interviews and clips and whatnot. We're actually going to watch a clip from an attorney working with one of the families and whatnot to talk about this. But people kind of went back and forth with this. And one thing that I have noticed, and we can use this as a little segue point, is, the comment sections on this case. And whoa, Mama Gemma, they are very wired. People are very, split down the line on many different factors in this, whether, he's guilty or not. Fact of the matter is, we don't know yet, right? He's been alleged against this. The evidence doesn't look good, but he hasn't had his day in trial yet. So there's that, right? None of us were there. So, I wasn't there. Nobody was there, right? Except for a few people. And unfortunately, several of those people no longer have their lives. They have no way to tell their side of the story. So this in particular, I noticed, a lot of people were really pressed about this. And oftentimes I'll try to, make sure that I have especially a victim's name correct and things of that nature. But yeah, I would have thought that the judge might have had a better grasp on this dynamic before he announced it, but apparently not. So let's listen to a very quick clip from one of the attorneys here and what he had to say about it.
Etc. So.
Shannon, there was something that Chanley brought up today. She just described how the family was all there inside of this courtroom in the gallery, waiting, even bringing the little baby who is named after the victims in this case. And I wanted to ask you about something that she brought up about it, something that seemed to bother some of your clients involving the pronunciation of Kaylee's name. And I wanted, because that's been reported, I wanted to give you the opportunity to help people understand what it's like for a family to be inside of a courtroom and to be trying so hard to protect their loved one's legacy and the way that that legacy is portrayed.
Well, I mean, it's hard to understand sometimes the pronunciations, I guess, of the victims in this case. But, there were some mistakes made today regarding that. I'm sure that those will be corrected in the future. You always want to feel like that you're being represented and the victims are being represented in the case. And so it was disappointing, I think, for a lot of members of the family when the judge did not properly pronounce a couple of the victims' names right. And I think that's something that will be corrected moving forward.
I have no doubt about that either. I'm sure the judge will hopefully correct that going forward. I can understand how the family members and the victims and whatnot would have been a little bit, stressed over that. Now, let's continue watching a couple of other clips, and then we're going to get into the body cam footage.
Do you understand the maximum penalty? Yes. Okay, Ms. Taylor, is Mr. Koberger prepared to plead to these charges?
Your Honor, we will be standing silent.
Okay, because Mr. Koberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge, counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now at this juncture, the state has 60 days to give notice of intention to seek the death penalty.
Okay, now the infamous stand silent. I know this happens a lot, right? It's something that we're not too used to seeing, I guess, but it's a tactic. Now, again, I've read so many different things out there talking about, what this could be, and the fact is, I ain't no lawyer, okay? I don't know what it means. You know what I'm saying? But, from what I can tell, it's like, okay, I do think that there is an overall reasoning behind this, and one of the things with this case that I think has so many people like, is there is this, so many different little odd things that go with it. Now, this is not to say that standing silent thing is odd, but I think it is a maneuver. I think it is a tactic that we will know what for later on. So we'll just kind of have to wait to see exactly what that means. But, for me, watching this unfold, there is this level of just, what is going on here? Just like, this, where he's going to stand silent. He's not going to say this. The very, matter of fact, boom, yes, no, understand. Seeing some little bits of emotion come out of him from here and there. It's just odd. And again, I just think there's an overall tactic that we have not seen yet by the defense. And I think they're still trying to figure that out. I think that there's a lot of evidence that probably doesn't look good. And so we're going to have to see exactly what comes out. Because if you look at these other trials that we've followed recently, if you've been following me, you'll know that a lot of the stuff we saw along the way, but at the end of the day, there's some stuff that when it finally came down to it and in trial, it was like, whoa, okay. We didn't know that was there. So nothing is in concrete until it really comes down to it. And again, we don't even know at this point. He could end up pleading out. So anyways, let's continue.
About October 2nd, starting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for 6 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Anything else we need to address today, Ms. Taylor?
Not with regard to the trial setting, no.
Okay, so trial, October, 6 weeks. As we know, most of the time when this comes up, it will probably get postponed out, right? So we're just going to have to see. That is not set in stone, but it's somewhere to start with. And that's the biggest thing with this prelim, with these charges coming out finally, and all this, and the plea, and It's a place to start with and to move from. Now, what I want to do is now go and look at some of these clips from this traffic stop and talk for a moment about the comparison of his behavior. Because when I watched this, I was like, okay, this is making more sense. And again, this is not to sit here and insinuate guilt or not guilt or anything like that. It's just, an interesting observation to me. So let's get into the first clip.
Hello, I am Officer Loangus. Stops being audio and video recorded. I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so
I was behind you the whole
left.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you run the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep.
Okay, so now if you remember, if you've been following this, there was other body cam footage released, like when he was traveling back home with his father after the murders had taken place. Looking at this now and then looking back at that, I'm like, yeah, he just kind of acts this way, right? He just has this very intense demeanor. But again, Ted Bundy seemed to be that way. And I'm not trying to insinuate anything because of Ted Bundy, but it's just the context of everything. His look, this way that he talks, all this, it so reminds me of that. But what we're going to do is, number one, pay attention to how he fixates on this charge, right? Or on this whole, the situation of what he did. So keep that in mind as we watch these clips. Also, the officer's super nice, right? Very informative. Almost like customer service officer here. So let's keep going.
So would you explain that to me a little bit further? So in Pennsylvania, when you're stuck like in their intersection, you have to make the left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done been? Just
You're
back up in
not
that
supposed to
situation?
block an intersection like that in Washington, so just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation, and then then you're running a red light, so it's another ticketable offense. So you're not supposed to proceed into the intersection until you can go, because a lot of people do what you just did, right? Is like you're sitting in the intersection waiting, and then turns, and then you're blocking, so.
Yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn. So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through.
Oh.
Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, like right before I made the turn, there was someone who like made a right. And they didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go, so you don't get stuck.
Now you notice at the end where the officer was like, I would advise to just not do that. Okay, but this is what I'm talking about. Number one, look at how intense he is over this, right? Where he's like, okay, well, there was some confusion with the person that was sitting there, in front of you or whatever. Now, it has been so long, knock on wood, since I have been like pulled over for like a traffic type thing. My first thought that I'm thinking here is I'm like, okay, if this is going on, I wouldn't be trying to be like, this is, explaining it away, Now, I get why he's doing it. I'm not holding it against him. But part of me would just be like, oh, is that wrong? Oh, God, sorry. That's probably how it'd be. Like, it would be real cut short, but he's so intense in this. Now, also, we know what he was studying in school, right? So, this was, kind of par for the course where he might truly be, like, genuinely interested. Like, well, what do we do here? And as we'll see in a couple of the clips coming up, where he's like, I'm from a small town. We don't have crosswalks. We don't have fancy stuff like that. But again, the officer's very patient here. But again, just notice the look on his face, the demeanor, and what I see underneath the surface is just, a very intense fixation on this is what's in front of me, we're doing this. Let me ask all these questions about it, inquisitiveness, all that. This is going down speculation street. This is not proven. This is not fact. If it were to turn out that hands down evidence came out that, oh, he did these murders, it was him. He had been, hunting them down, stalking them beforehand, or whatever. I can then make the bridge from this, just quick interaction of, okay, well, let's get really intense about this one thing and ask all these questions and figure it out and blah, blah, blah. Look at that intensity, but apply it to like some kind of compulsion with somebody who you end up taking their life.
Let's see.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up. And not...
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation, because you're either going to back up into somebody or you're going to run a red light. So, or you're going to be sitting in an intersection.
Yeah.
There's not really a great option there.
Yeah, I was just slightly into the crosswalk, so...
Now, again, he kind of comes back. Anything she offers, he comes back with one thing. Yeah, I was just slightly in the crosswalk. Which I think is interesting because, it's almost like he's back-talking her, and not back-talking her, but like coming up with an excuse or like challenging each thing to be like, it's almost like he's want to say, well, I was really doing this, so I don't think it's wrong, But at the end, when he apologizes, I think I have the clip in here, it seems authentic as well, where I'm like, yeah, I just think that he's intense like this. I just think that this type of person. And again, if it ends up being that this is proven that he did this and there was this like, really intense fixation on one of the students or all of them, whatever the case was, you can see it coming out through the cracks in these interactions like this.
Yeah, where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have like crosswalks.
Oh,
so even if you're kind of slightly... there's a little bit more leeway as well. Like there are a few lines. Like there's one white line and there's another one in front. Like there's like a certain margin from which you can actually kind of put your vehicle, place your vehicle.
Yeah. So I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that, proceeding through when you don't. When you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage. I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to...
Oh, no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah.
Now, again, he doesn't end there, right? Now, keep this in mind. We don't know if we're getting a ticket yet in this interaction, right? He's very interested to get this. Now, this could also be helping him get out of the ticket, and that could be his whole thing too. I mean, this is irrelevant at this point, right? He's in way more trouble now than he is for this ticket. But again, it's just how much he keeps fixating on it and going back to it. I'm from Pennsylvania. We don't have crosswalks. Yeah. You know, just that level of intensity, but also like the eye contact and that type thing. Now, again, I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, because I think that and I don't even think his behavior is like weird. You know, it's just super intense. And I'm not trying to say because it's that way he must be guilty either, right? I mean, I get that he hasn't had his day in court, but I'm just sitting here and I'm like, you know, if this was the person that was in that house and this is the level of intensity that he displays, and, you know, in this scenario, you would expect some adrenaline, right? But not hardcore. You know, what was he like in that moment if that was him in that home, you know? Or in the time leading up, if he was stalking them or whatever, right? That fixation, I mean, I can see how it just, you know, explode.
So I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone unless you can clearly just clear it right away.
Okay.
So
then basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time, but
it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. But well, except for the fact that I was blocking the crosswalk, which is what I went through.
And states vary a lot from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
I'm actually just from a very rural area, so we just don't have crosswalks.
Oh.
Unless I visit an area where there are crosswalks, and then it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
I do apologize if I was asking you too many questions about the law. I wasn't trying to
No, not at all. Like I understand you're not from here, so.
Okay, so yeah. Now, I liked that he was like, apologized for that, but again, it's that level of intensity where he's like, I do apologize for asking you too many questions. But I mean, I get that, and she's super cool, right? I mean, this is like a cool cop, you know, where she's like, no, you're not from here. I get it. Like, it worked, okay? But where I'm going from is just this level, this focus, this intensity. So also when you think back to like the cop cam where they were stopping him along the way back home, you know, and he had more of that, like, you know, he would do these mannerisms, you know, like talking about, you know, and kind of like interrupting his dad and that type thing. You know, when the cop was talking to them and whatnot. So again, I'm always fascinated by this. You know, I'm going to probably revisit one of the body analyst channels out there or whatever that have done some stuff on him, because I'm starting to just see patterns is what I'm seeing here. You know, and again, this strategic type thing in the courtroom, and just seeing where it goes, because, you know, we don't know right now, right? And more stuff keeps coming out about this. And there's also just, you know, odd things. Another thing that came out in it, but in here, you know, and this is, you know, by the time you're watching this is probably kind of old news or whatever. But, you know, again, here at the sofa, we're not trying to get to the break-in stuff. We're just trying to talk about it. But that is the grand jury stuff, and the defense trying to get the information from that. You know, there's just some things that seem kind of odd in the way they've been done. And how the information is being relayed and not relayed in that type of situation. So it will be interesting to see what ends up happening with the media in this case. It will be interesting to see how far it goes. Because one thing that I'm going to be really looking out for in this case specifically is if he ends up doing a plea deal, which then we'll know, right? Okay, this is, you know, the evidence was too damning. He went ahead and took whatever they might offer him. Or, you know, if it doesn't end up being him, right? We don't know. So far, what I can tell, the evidence does not look good. You know, the evidence against him. And just looking at little behavioral things like this, to me, I just think it's interesting. It's one of the things that attracts me to true crime. So that's it. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Did you feel a certain way about his, you know, standing silent, all that type thing, the way that court appearance went down? Any of the things while he was in court, the way he reacted to hearing some of the charges, the names, the actions against the victims, and then this body cam footage, right? Did you think anything of that? Anyways, let me know down in the comment section below. And until we meet around the comment section again, I'll see you there.